AmandaLand. 60-second headline. And I run down some news right quick.
Run it down, mama. Put us on.
When I say that the genocide in Gaza is reaching its final stage, I don't mean that the cause is over or the cause should be abandoned. I'm saying that the plan all along has been to move internally displaced people throughout Gaza, move them into camps, then bomb the camps, then starve the population, and now a starved and weakened population is going to be moved in on by the Israeli military, and they're going to kill or attempt to kill all the resistance that is left in Gaza. And that is a genocide. And this is the darkest chapter of that genocide. And constantly, the argument that is made to kind of say that this isn't a genocide is saying, well, we're not killing all the groups of people, right? Every member of a group. And if that is the definition used, then there has never been a genocide in the world. And of course, that is not true. But yeah, that would mean that there were no more Rwandans left, there were no more Armenians left, and there were no more Jewish people left. And all of those groups have been subjected to genocide, and Palestinians are the latest in this chapter, right? So yeah, when I say that the genocide is entering its end stage, I'm not saying that all Palestinians will be killed. I'm saying this is a plan to enact a final solution.
Davidson. We came in.
Wow,
Wait.
what an intro.
Wait, real quick, guys. I completely forgot to do the word of the day because I got so wrapped up in the story of Kenny. So we'll come back to that later in the show. Welcome, Davidson. Davidson, you have one of the waspiest white names I've ever heard in my entire life.
I know. I think it might take the cake, honestly. Davidson Boswell.
It doesn't even feel real. It feels like a character in Trading Space.
It's literally like if you look up like white person in the dictionary. Example, Davidson Boswell.
Davidson Boswell. Like, I feel like you're in the Music Man. It is so happy to have you here. Like many of the people here in the chat, I was introduced to your thoughts on the Instagrams, and you never miss.
Thank you. Yeah. It's interesting because we exist in a world where the media won't accurately report on what we can look at with our eyes. So I guess I would say you occupy the same space, which is like, all right, well, I'm just going to say what I see. And that's just not happening at places like the New York Times, Washington Post, anywhere. So especially as it relates to what you just played, the genocide in Gaza.
Well, I was really, we're watching right now college graduations going down, and the students are doing their thing. I know right now they're outside of Columbia protesting. I would love to renounce. I don't know if there's like an official renouncement ceremony that can be done for degrees, but I may need to do that for my Columbia degree because I really look at Columbia like, what was that about? I feel like if I didn't go to the Institute for Research in African American Studies, like I would have already renounced it, but I feel like I was in like a little hovel.
Right. Yeah. No, all the stuff that they write about like truth and justice on their buildings and stuff like that should be sandblasted off at this point.
Yes.
It's so hypocritical.
Now, I always see you around New York for your videos. Like, I'm always like, oh, what train station is he in? Look, that's 110th Cathedral Parkway. What's he doing over there? So, and then I just saw that you're doing stand-up. So tell me a little bit more about the world of Davidson Boswell, because I saw that you had a comedy show listed, and I was like,
Yeah, well, I'm a comedian and also I guess at this point an activist as well, because you kind of are forced into these things once you start talking about third rail issues in American politics, like Israel, criticizing Israel. So I'm trying to pair these very disparate worlds because I talk about this a lot. But so I started out doing comedy, and then around October 7th of 2023, I started really talking about like, hey, there's about to be a genocide in Gaza. Like, this is going to happen. Yes. They're saying it's not happening, but they're going to bomb hospitals, schools until there's no one left. And you get labeled as an anti-Semite when you do that. And I'm not trying to say anything too crazy, but there is an enormous amount of Zionism here in New York City, and particularly in the comedy community. A lot of the comedy clubs in New York are literally run and operated by former IDF soldiers, right? So
that I did not know.
Yeah, so the Comedy Cellar is a good example, you know? So it's very crazy that in a world like the comedy that talks about speaking truth to power, the ultimate power, cannot be criticized, which is bombing, you know? So
Yeah.
it really made me realize that I had to change my path because it's interesting when you're going along and you're like, oh, this is the goal, but the goal is filled with people that I would never ever want to be around. So you have to make a third way. So I'm trying to fuse these two things of like activism and comedy. So you really have to be very intentional about who you work with when you start to realize that people are okay with all these atrocities that are happening around the world, as
Yes.
long as it doesn't affect their ability to like feature in Des Moines, Iowa. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, what is more important to you? You know what I mean? Like $80 or an entire population getting wiped off the face of the earth, you know? Not to be too like,
No. You're in the
yeah,
right
yeah.
place. You're in the right place.
Okay,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
that is my, I went through a similar experience as a comic. I mean, I left stand up altogether because I just don't have any interest in it right now for my messaging, but that doesn't disregard the necessity to be in that space with this messaging. And last year I had a tour that ended up having to cancel because the Zionists had effectively gotten my shows canceled and hacked my ticket site. I was doing a show in
Hello.
Detroit and they had a truck parked outside with my face on the side that said Amanda Seales is a Jew hater.
What? Oh
Yes.
my God.
And
Yeah.
they had it driving around Detroit. They had done an email campaign. And then I had shows in, I was ending my tour in my biggest markets, and my ticket site kept crashing and it kept crashing and it kept crashing. And folks was like, that's what they do. Like, that's what's happening. And so I ended up having to cancel my whole tour. They also got my show they got my show canceled in Philly at the Kimmel Center. Kimmel, right? So this is a Jewish last name, but it turns out they end up also being Zionists. And so they were willing to cancel my show. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to do my one woman show. What would the ancestors say? I'm going to bring that forward. But to your point, finding venues that were not run by Zionists. Like, so we were like, okay, let's go to City Winery. They've always wanted to work with you. So I said, wait, Google City Winery,
Right.
find out who the owner is. And sure enough, he's a very loud and proud Zionist. And it becomes like, we thought it was hard to find venues that aren't Ticketmaster run. No.
Yeah. It goes much deeper than that. Yeah. Well, that's
So I commend
that's really
you.
interesting. And that's also tantamount to a threat. It's similar to what Bill Ackman did when he wanted to get
Yes.
those Harvard
He threatened me.
graduates blackballed. Yeah. So when you put your name on a truck and drive it around, the implicit threat is if you see this person, intimidate them or even get up into their face and hurt them, you know?
Yes.
And that, if you want to know anything about a power dynamic, see who you're allowed to criticize, you know? And so like, you're not allowed to criticize Zionists, but you can come after you, who I don't know. Yeah. Like, so that doesn't make any sense to me. Right. So, yeah. And it just makes you, and anti-Semitism is such a cudgel, you know, it's like a black mark. It's like the new McCarthyism, you know, they're like calling you a communist essentially.
Absolutely.
So it just doesn't make any sense. Down is up is down, down is up.
Where did you go to school?
A really small school in South Carolina called Wofford. They love
Because
the name
your
Davidson Boswell down
vocabulary.
there. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
We've heard
Oh,
tantamount
yeah.
thus far. We've heard cudgel. We're big on vocab at this show. You came in while we were doing a vocab word. So yes.
Right. Yeah, no, I loved that. I love that. And there's so many, what was the word? Factuous? There are so many factuous people in the Zionism debate. They're like, actually, you know what I mean?
It's like, no.
Yeah.
No.
But I'm really, but I was a history major, which got me in to be a history major is to know the history of the Middle East because, or at least the last 30 years, because that has been our theater of war, you know? So you can't really extricate those two things from each other. You can't like have a United States history without a history of Iraq, without a history of Syria, without a history of Yemen, and of course, without a history of Palestine.
You know what I noticed too is that there's this trick that I feel like the United States has effectively deployed, which is that basically anything that happened after 1945 is like not history. Like history begins 45 and back, and then there's like the civil rights movement, but anything after that is seen kind of just like things that happened. And I'm like,
Right.
no, time continues to go on. Things are happening that are causing things to happen. This is history. We have to continue to study.
Yeah, there was a great tweet that I saw about like Donald Trump introducing tariffs again, and they're like they've been done in 1838, 1932, and now, and the common theme is everyone had to be dead in order for them to introduce it again, right? You know what I mean? Because they knew it was a bad idea. So yeah, I think there are people alive and that remember these periods of great strife. You know, like civil rights, like protests and stuff like that, and they're like, no, the neat bow that you put on it is the Civil Rights Act passed, and now we all live in harmony. And obviously, that's not true. That plantation house
Martin Luther King literally talks
down.
about that in his book. He literally
Really?
talks about
Yeah.
in his last book, where do we go from here, community or chaos, which I think you'd really appreciate. He talks about like, you know, we got the Voting Rights Act passed, we got the Civil Rights Act passed, and then people kept getting lynched, and the Klan got stronger. So this was not, he was like, you know, by the time Martin Luther King stood on that balcony, I think he was like, y'all just take me out. Right. I really believe that Martin knew if he got on that balcony that it was going to go down. And I think that's why he's smiling, because he's like, I've done everything I can.
Wow.
Really
when Malcolm X got assassinated, he like raised his arms like this, you know what I mean? He was almost embracing the, And then James Baldwin, who I see behind you, was like, when Ronald Reagan got elected, he was like, I'm going to France. You know what I mean? Like, I give up. Like, it's, deuces.
Like, I'm out. Actually, fun fact, well, not fun fact at all, but serious fact, comedian Dick Gregory had actually talked to Malcolm X the night before he went to the Audubon, and Malcolm was like, you know, I'd really love for you to come, like, to support, because remember, he had just come back from Mecca. He was no longer aligned with the Nation of Islam, and so he was trying to start his own faction of coalition building, and Dick was like, if you go in there, it's not going to end well. And he was like, well, I have no choice. I had no choice, and so he went. So shout out to Dick Gregory, who cursed me out and I cursed him out. And
so you're part of history. That's kind of crazy.
Yes, he was telling a story about the Constitution. And I asked the signing of the Constitution. I asked the question, and he was like, "Shut up! Shut the F up! I'm talking." And I was like, "I know who the heck you talking to, old man. You ain't talking to the right one." And I left. So,
oh man,
there we have that. So let's talk about. Okay. I'm just going to play a little bit of this because I don't like to give them airtime, but I just think it's worth noting that when you see folks like us talking about the behavior of Zionists, it's not something that we are inferring. It is something we are literally referencing. This is language.
כל ילד, כל תינוק בעזה הוא אויב. כל תינוק בעזה הוא אויב.
He's literally saying every child in Palestine is an enemy. He's literally saying every child in Gaza is the enemy. We need to conquer the enemy and colonize it. And this is a former MP of the Israeli Knesset. And he's saying without question that Hamas is not the issue. All of Palestine is the issue. He says verbatim, every child, every baby in Gaza is the enemy. The enemy is not Hamas. And it's not Hamas's military wing, like our chief military prosecutor tells us, that we're not allowed to harm a Hamas member unless they're part of the military wing. When you see this, and then you still see folks in the United States who are in government, who are in legislation, who are supporting this, how do you, I don't even know what the question is. How do you smile?
Yeah. The only thing that I know is happening is there is a generational split in America, right? So everyone under the age of, I guess when people don't have like the Holocaust as their primary historical reference point, as like the last true atrocity that happened in the world, right? Which does not, I mean, obviously an awful thing, but does not inform our every waking movement.
It's true.
Anyone below the age of like 60, which unfortunately, those are not the people that have any power here in the United States. We live in a geriocracy, or whatever that word is, where it's like we're run by gerontocracy. Yeah. So
how old are you, Davidson?
I'm 33. Yeah.
Okay.
So I heard you say you're 43. So we're the same, like we're both millennials. So it's like it's a very different world we inherited. So it just comes off as like increasingly hollow propaganda, because you're using propaganda against primary source material, right? You're like, okay, well, that argument makes no sense because I just listened to one of the most powerful people in Israeli society openly call for genocide. And what is frustrating and what's hard to make it sound like you're not being racist sometimes is that Israeli society supports these actions. You know what I mean? So this is a nation that polls very highly to commit ethnic cleansing in that state. They've been raised on this kind of like superiority complex. Yeah. And if you learn about the rape of Nanking or anything like that, Japanese boys and girls were taught in school about the inferiority of Chinese people, right? This is incredibly dangerous to do to a group of people. It's what's happening here in America with trying to change education curriculums in places like Oklahoma and Florida. And it has real consequences when you brainwash people, right? So it's very important that, and this is why I smile, because I do consider myself part of a movement, a youth movement, to make sure that young people, because old people have turned their brains off to this, right? They're not fully. I'm sure you have boomers in your audience and stuff like that. I'm not speaking, but it is very much breaks down along generational
They know
lines,
they're the
right?
unique ones. They know they're the outliers.
Yeah. So I'm just like, all right, so we are now engaged in a war between ideas, right? And whoever wins that idea war it's going to have great consequences, because they're at the what's the quote? If you can make someone believe absurdities, you can make them commit atrocities. And unfortunately, Israel has been so propagandized that there's a view. They have this like viewpoint set up so they can bring their kids and they can look out at Gaza being bombed. Have you seen that? Right?
Yes,
like where
wildly
so it's like,
dystopian.
Right. So you really have to think that they aren't people in order for yourself to be able to do that. So we really have to continue to fight the fight. And obviously you said I joined when you said you were having a depressive episode yesterday. How are we all not just walking around having depressive episodes all the time, right? Like, so when you see that, so we're engaged in a struggle.
We are engaged in a struggle. And, I think also just for a lot of us, this is a new level of awareness that is now active, right? Like there was awareness before, but now like there's activation that has to happen, and that has been happening with people protesting, people being a part of BDS, et cetera, et cetera. And I think for a lot of us, it was more so just something that was happening kind of like in our zeitgeist, and now it's a part of our existence. And if you as a comic, you as a comic saying like, I've had to literally adjust the pursuance of my goals and dreams based on this knowledge and this commitment to my integrity, says everything about, just how impactful it is in this time frame to the United States than it was prior, right? So
totally.
I also just commend you on that, because what you're doing is you're forging a path that is eventually going to be followed by a lot of other people, because it didn't exist before. And so that's a doozy. So
well, so are you. So I think
well, it sucks for us.
What we're doing right now did not exist 5 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, this is brand new. Credibility is completely shot.
Yes.
Joe Biden was run as a corpse.
We are going to get into this. Yes.
Yeah. And so like, once you realize that everyone was completely happy with just to lie to us and bring us back into the arms of Trump, well, then you're like, okay, this is not worth preserving. We need to forge a new way forward, because why do I want to follow in the footsteps of any of that bullshit?
Which brings us to our next conversation. So, y'all, Biden's top aide was making bank. All right. So In my latest edition of The Democrats Are Full of It and Do Not Have Your Best Interests at Heart, the new book, Original Sin, the President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again, written by CNN's Jake Tapper and Axios's Alex Thompson, is now, it's coming out, okay? Now, here's my frustration. You all are journalists. You're just, and I love Axios, but I'm like, so we're just talking about this now? Oh, because it was good for a book. It not only reveals that both of them to me are sideways, but it also demonstrates how deep self-serving corruption exists within this government. Because you guys, the person who got the $4 million got it because he was the head of Biden's re-election campaign. So then you're like, oh, well, then he had to run again. And this guy is, to this day, saying, no, he was fine. He was fine. Thoughts, Davidson?
Well, I mean, it really shows you how there are no consequences for these actions, right? Because that's so egregious, that's so institutionally corrupt. But Washington is just this closed loop, you know, and they stay within that ecosystem. So you want to like get yours because you're not going to be have access to power again for another 4 years because Trump's coming back. So yeah, like if you were truly a public servant, you'd be like, all right, well, pay me $10,000 and I'll tell you that you shouldn't run again, and that'll be my consulting fee. You know what I mean?
Right.
And let me go work for a candidate that can actually beat this guy. You know what I mean? But that's not the game at all. The game is to get reelected, or if you have proximity to power, to just stay in the limelight long enough to get your bank to a level where you can afford a 2-bedroom in Alexandria somewhere, right? It's just so fucking corrupt. And once again, this folds back into the same theme as Israel, because they're telling us to not believe our eyes, right? That is the consistent theme with the media, is like, no, that's not a genocide, and this guy is spry and intellectually with it, and he's definitely not dementia ridden. So it's so frustrating because it seems like they pretty much had the first draft of this book done by the time Trump won. You know what I mean? Like, this thing was cranked out fast. Like,
well, let me tell you, they've been writing this. They've been writing this. Like, you know, books take time. I just went through a situation where I'm now deciding to buy my book back from Simon & Schuster because they have a timeline that you have to adhere to for their production. And if you are not willing to adhere to that timeline, they're like, well, then we're just going to keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. But like, in terms of production, they have a specific way that they do this. And I feel like this is a great question. Do we think they announced the cancer to squash the book discussion? What do you think?
I think yes, because I think I'm trying not to be too much of a conspiracy theorist, but he did
At this
say,
point, is it conspiracy theory? I feel like it's just being thoughtful about these people and their terror.
Right. Like, there's very few laws of science, so this is still a theory. But he said in a gaffe, like in 2022, he's like, cancer. You know what I mean? And it's like, wait, where'd that come from?
He literally said, you know, people who have cancer like me.
Yeah. It's like, wait. What? Yeah. And then you just start, you don't want to start looking at the eye on top of the pyramid of the $1 bill or something like that. Like, get really into like the weeds. But it is like, wait, he has deep cancer in his bones. Like, doesn't that take a while to metastasize?
Yes.
And I think the answer is yes. And I think yes. Once again, you remember when the FBI was like running that investigation of how he had like documents in his garage, and one of the investigators was like, he's a well-meaning old man that forgets. This is the same kind of thing where it's like, well, you wouldn't attack me, a cancer victim. And it's like, actually, you're wrong about that. I will attack you because you're incredibly selfish and put your needs above the other 330 million people here in the United States. So yeah, I think it's totally that. I think he's totally trying to deflect.
I have an article I'm going to post on Substack tomorrow, an essay about, well, I think essay is a strong word, but some thoughts about folks who are simultaneously celebrating Malcolm X's birthday while sending well wishes to Joe Biden. And I'm like, you can't do the two at the same time. It's against the laws of physics.
The guy who authored the '94 crime bill was no fan of Malcolm X. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. All right, so let's talk about Trump's big, beautiful bill, which I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but it's actually pretty ugly. So a White House, a whitewash House spokesperson, because that's now what I'm calling them now, a whitewash House spokesperson has said that the bill, which is filed with immense tax cuts for billionaires and corporations, along with zero to no regulation for AI, will quote unquote stimulate the economy, earning $2.6 trillion over the next 10 years. By the way, they just be making up words. I think it's only a matter of time for them to say, we're going to have $1 bajillion.
Right.
Bajillion. Right. Now, after their math with the tariffs, there is no reason for us to trust their math. And the nonpartisan Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget agrees disagrees, countering what the whitewash House spokesman says. They're saying that in actuality, it will increase the debt by $3.3 trillion through 2034, which is less than 10 years, and increase annual deficits by $2.9 trillion to $3.3 trillion. Now, I know for a lot of us, it's like, okay, numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But the United States exists on debt. It exists on credit. And Moody's Ratings, which is a 115-year-old top investor service that provides data intelligence and analytical tools and is considered the global credit, bonds, and securities rating agency of choice, they just lowered the United States credit rating. So we used to have a AAA credit rating, and they have lowered it. So it was a triple uppercase A. And now we're just one uppercase and two lowercase A's. This is similar to when you go to your favorite food spot and they got a B outside on the window. And if you're in New York, you know that's a chance. That's a chance you're taking. But by the way, since they have completely just gutted the FDA, which barely did anything in the first place, I mean, anything you're eating at this point is a B or C rating. So this bill is not getting through, apparently because a lot of Republicans are not supporting it. Do you know anything about this bill?
Yeah, so Josh Hawley.
I know he does. Go ahead.
Well, Josh Hawley actually is occupying a really crazy space. He's the guy from Missouri, white nationalist from Missouri. We can call it like we see it. But he's like, listen, this is awful politics. Like, even he understands that to give billionaires tax cuts while at the same time of making aggressive cuts to Medicaid is class warfare, right? And at a certain point, it's like, all right, we're going to give tax rebates for jets and yachts. And then your kid, if he gets measles, which is incredibly likely, is not going to be able to go to a hospital for it without getting a $4,000 bill at the end of it. So once people are dying, once people don't have their second and third meals taken care of for the day, they're eating less, they're having less access to medicine, and they see people preening at the Met Gala, you know what I mean? Like, it just really stokes this internal division. And so I even think Republicans at this point are like, listen, we're giving up the game. This is too intense. And so, I mean, not to, delve too far into like Marxism, but the capital
we always love to delve into Marxism here.
Capital is concentrating too far. And if you saw the initial tax code, and I think this was underreported on, that for the first time ever in 2018, labor was taxed at a higher rate than capital was, right? So money sitting in an index fund or a stock market that just accrues value is taxed less than you going out there and working for a living.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So if they also pair that with further tax cuts and Medicaid slashing, I mean, the Molotov cocktails are going to come out, So they're like, all right, and I could be wrong, but I don't think they can push too far. Yeah.
Let's take it even. Does this feel like conspiracy theory to consider that maybe they want to create this class war for the goal of being able to enact a martial law that allows for incarceration of people at a rate where there is now a really significant free labor force?
That is an interesting, because I always wonder about, so yes, I think that's very possible. it seems like markets like stability based on capital flight from the United States going into markets like Europe with somewhat more stable democracies and stuff like that. So I wonder if Trump, because that seems to be the only thing that reins in Trump's worst impulses, is the Dow crashing, the bonds markets like going crazy. So I wonder if like who's the guy, Jamie Dimon, or Ken Griffin would be like, don't do this. You know what I mean? Like we are okay with oh shit, sorry. With
There's a ghost.
Yeah, I'm about to, I get a red dot on my forehead all of a sudden. No, but I'm just saying, like, I think there's like rich people who have cleaved off all their morality but are still smart, and then there are dumb people that have a lot of power right now, and there's kind of this push and pull happening where they're like, okay, we gotta not make it this obvious that we hate poor people. And so Trump is just doing it too quickly.
There's also real fearfulness around the fact that poor people, someone literally just said, what in the Born Identity? And I literally had just said in my head, you do give us a bit, you are a little bit of that. So I feel like there's something very real about the fact that they know, which Trump doesn't seem to grasp, but once you push people far enough, they will just come and take it from you.
Right.
There's a whole legion of Luigis that are very close to the surface if you push them far enough, right? And I don't think I think the smart ones that have cleaved off their morality, though, they do have a sense of like, yeah, but this could become unlivable if we make it unlivable for enough people.
They still want to be able to go into public, right? Like these guys are going to have to get into their castles and bunkers. They already kind of like, they go to Gstaad and all these like places like Aspen and hang out with each other. But you still have to somewhat exist in the world. And if you're being this antagonistic and this greedy, you're going to have a hard time walking into the Hilton Hotel in Midtown. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be tough for you.
For those who don't know, the place where that happened cannot be more populated, like in New York.
Yeah.
Like it is Times. It was the one in Times Square, right? It was on 51st.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
The center of the center of New York.
Yes. Like I know exactly where they were standing. So I just want to tell you, Davidson, that we appreciate you. And I wasn't sure until we did this interview whether I was going to bestow this upon you, but Davidson, you are a high quality white.
Yes. All right. Yeah. I can't even tell my parents; they won't understand. Thank you so much.
Good for you. You're a high quality white, Davidson. Actually, that leads me to ask you: how did you become this high quality of a white?
I went to Haiti when I was 17 and saw.
Wait.
Yeah.
Wait. Yeah. How? Why?
Well, it was through a church mission trip, which a lot of good that did, but it was still like, but I saw the legacy of imperialism, the legacy of, I guess, white supremacy. The first successful slave revolt was in Haiti, and then the rest of the world never stopped fucking them over after that. And you see the legacy 150 years later. So I went there after the earthquake happened and stayed there for 2 weeks, and that had a profound effect on the way I viewed the world. And then I went to college, started taking all of these classes on the most impactful class I took was the Life and Times of Malcolm X. I saw like how exactly right up here too. I saw how much all these institutions that we were supposed to like venerate actually spent most of their time following around people that we now consider heroes. I'm like, all right. And then also walking around with the name Davidson Boswell and my face already gives people this preconceived notion about me. And I got tired of it. Basically, I was like, all right, no, I'm not. So I'm gonna go really hard in the opposite direction. But yeah, thank you so much for having me.
We appreciate you.
I am gonna be following you closely because I love everything you're doing here. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Davidson. We appreciate you. And folks can follow you at your name, at Davidson Boswell on the Instagrams. And when can we see you on stage?
So I have a great show coming up at Grow 34 June 20th. I hope you guys will buy tickets. That's at my Instagram and on my Instagram. And then I'm all around. If you follow me on social media, I perform all over the city all the time. I got a show at Union Square at this consignment shop, which is going to be fun. So yeah.
People don't understand when you're a comic, like you might be. I will never forget in LA, like the biggest show that people were telling me I need to get on was in like the attic, like backroom space of a Chinese restaurant in where was it? In some Los Feliz. They're like, that's where you gotta go. I'm like, all right. And I went.
Yeah, when people ask you where you perform, you say everywhere. Yeah.
Everywhere. Yes. I have performed in pizza shops. I performed in bars. I performed in the crawl space of a Chinese restaurant in Los Feliz. So Davidson, you have an excellent, fabulous rest of your week. And thank you so much. And if you're not writing, do you write?
Yeah, please follow my Substack
at
Davidson Boswell. Yeah, I write all the time. So, and I look forward to, I'll follow you after this.
I was like, you literally said spry. Okay, y'all. That's the mark of a true vocabularian. When you got the vocab word with the few syllable, with the one syllable vocab word, that gives it away.
Oh, man.
You have a good one, Davidson. Thank you. I enjoyed laughing and learning with you. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And tell your friends. Also, listen to the podcast. It's available everywhere pods are casted. Listen ad-free by subscribing to Patreon Amanda Seals. Come on and join the Seals Squad. Views from AmandaLand. Live 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Wednesday, with content on Thursday and Friday at YouTube Amanda Seals TV.
Smart, funny, and